Welcome into the closing line, folks. Monday, October 16th, 2017, presented by SportsbookReview.com. What a busy, crazy weekend for us. A full slate on Saturday, full slate on Sunday. A lot of interesting upsets in the NFL football yesterday on Sunday. I believe coming in, I forget the actual number. I apologize. I should have had that offhand here but much more underdogs covering yesterday than normal, which means if you're a sharp player, if you're reading the lines correctly, you're going to make a lot of money in National Football League action. Some big news this week coming out. Obviously, looks like Aaron Rodgers is probably going to miss the rest of the season, undergoing undergoing surgery on his collarbone. Looks to end his season there. Going to lean on Brent Hundley the rest of the way. A lot to talk about tonight on the closing line. Wrapping up the weekend here in just a few moments, I'll introduce our resident Monday guest, Mr. Peter Loshak. But before we get to that, just setting up the card for you tonight, we got a Major League Baseball game to go over, an NHL game to go over, a Monday Night Football game to go over, and more importantly, looking over during the week. We're going to pick out a nice college five-pack here to give you some opening line information and also possibly get to some NFL information as well. Let's bring in our resident guest host on Mondays, Mr. Peter Loshak. Follow him on Twitter at @PLoshak. You can see him all over the Sportsbook Review networks here doing many shows, odds couple each and every day, Monday through Friday. You can also see him with the big man on campus on Saturday, 11 a.m. for the closing line college football edition. Let's not waste any more time. Mr. Peter Loshak, welcome in, buddy.
Oh, thanks for having me once again. Another Monday in the heart of football season. Donnie Rightside.
No, we're going to have a lot of fun. A lot of good stuff to talk about today. Some interesting stuff on the Major League Baseball diamond. You get a little bit of everything for us tonight. Not a huge slate. We know the NBA action is going to start up on, I believe, Wednesday night as opening night. But, Tampa Bay, Detroit tonight on the ice, Houston and the New York Yankees on the baseball diamond, Indianapolis and Tennessee on the football field. So a lot to go over, Pete. What do you want to – hey, the card is yours tonight, Pete. What do you want to do first? We can go over, hockey, baseball. What do you think we should do here?
Well, I guess we should start with the NFL game, right?
You got it. Let's hit some NFL action tonight, Pete. 275, 276, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time kickoff tonight. Jacoby Brissett is going to be once again behind center due to Andrew Luck being out at least another couple weeks, maybe practicing in the next few weeks. So we'll see on that one. Marcus Mariota going to make an appearance tonight at quarterback. For how long we should see. Obviously battling that hamstring injury. He is a mobile quarterback, so that could factor in tonight. Overall markets betting here, Pete. Spread dollars, 52% on the Indianapolis Colts and only 48% on Tennessee. Over-under opened up here at 46.5. Currently sitting at, 48 and 49. Now sitting a little bit lower, Pete, at 46.5. Looks like across the board. The line opened up in the favor of Tennessee once the quarterback position was announced. -8 at Pinnacle, -7 at Chris. Looks like it's settled into right around that 7 number, but you can also find at the Greek a -6.5. Pete, give me some thoughts on this game, buddy.
Well, I did give an official pick on this one in the morning show today. I think I'm 8-5 in the NFL this year in my official picks, and I took a shot with the under, and of course at that time it was 48 -110. So I gave the under. I also bet that one on my personal account at 48. It's now down to 46.5. And obviously Marcus Mariota, a huge arm. He should, when he's fully healthy, playing on a team that just wants to pass all day long with him, he could leave an explosive offense. But Tennessee, as we know, loves to run it. They're probably not going to open up the playbook too much with his health in question. So I'm expecting a pretty conservative game plan here from Tennessee. And the Colts are. They have this guy Malik Hooker is a great safety who can prevent big plays in the passing game. So I'm seeing a modest scoring game from the Colts as well, even though their defense has been bad in terms of the amount of points that they've given up. Their offensive line is also struggling a bit. So I'm seeing in general more likely than not a relatively modest paced game. And I took a shot with the under, and I'm glad I beat the line move. Doesn't mean that it's going to cash by any means, but glad it moved in my favor for sure.
Yeah, Pete, looking at this game overall, obviously the interesting part of it is Mariota is going to be back under center tonight for the Tennessee Titans. Looking at that, I know you took the under, which is great. And again, looks like the market is agreeing with you. Opened up at 48-49, now a little bit lower there. You got the best number, which again, always is going to help your cause. Do you think that number, to me, coming down a little bit, is more based on Marcus Mariota and what he's able to do? Because what we watched versus the Miami Dolphins, Tennessee couldn't move the football at all with the, obviously Matt Castle's not nearly the quarterback Marcus Mariota is, but that offense more based on read option, running the football, maybe the quarterback taking the ball 4 to 5 times per game, which you didn't have with Castle. But now you have a more athletic guy back under center. But the question here, Pete, is, are they going to let him run the football? They're going to say, hey, look, man, we know your hamstring is hurt. Don't try to open it up. If you have to scramble around in the pocket, just throw it away. Don't try to, burst out of the pocket, 6-7 yard gains. Did that factor in for you there, Pete, when you were looking at the over-under, or is it more just a feel for you tonight?
No, definitely that factored in, and it also factored in general. We know the kinds of game plans that Tennessee likes to employ anyway, which don't really actually, in my opinion, for ever since they've had Mariota, really play into his strengths as much as they probably could. I mean, the Colts have some big, weapons on offense. T.Y. Hilton, obviously, a huge threat to score at any time, and Brissett, if he's given time, is a very impressive, quarterback who plays, who fits well into NFL passing schemes. So, the Colts could put up a big offensive number, but my sense is more likely than not, again, these NFL totals and the sides, of course, as well, are very tight. And if you have a big edge, you're probably looking at like a 56, 57% play at most. But so to answer your question, yes, their expected use of and caution with Mariota definitely played into my thinking when I took the under, as well as a bunch of other factors.
Yeah, same to me. I think obviously with Mariota under center, there's a lot more value on taking the Tennessee Titans. It's interesting that line opened up, above a touchdown, because as you know, in the NFL, most things close up late. There's a couple blowouts each and every week, but looking at the favorite perspective here with Tennessee being at home, the fact that it's down to, Bet Online -7 +100, Sportsbook.com -7 -105. I think that number is going to settle in about right. If I had an additive, which I don't like anything on the game itself, I was leaning a little bit towards the over, just because of the fact that I'm not really a big fan of the way Indianapolis plays football on offense. It's either boom or bust. They're going to turn it over or make a big play. Same thing with their defense. They've been giving up a lot of yards. Just look at the passing yards that they've given up. 336 to San Francisco, 283 to Seattle, 235 to Cleveland, 306 to Arizona, and 310 to the Rams. So it does lean itself a little bit over. My whole factor in that is just looking at how Marcus Mariota is going to be able to operate within the pocket, if he can keep the sticks moving, because they should be able to run the football tonight versus the Indianapolis Colts. Passing, I don't know how much they're going to be able to do. And again, I don't know how right Marcus Mariota is, so I'm going to pass on the side. And as we're saying that now, Pete, Chris drops it to a -6.5 in the favor of the home team, Tennessee. So obviously Indianapolis taking a little bit of money. One would think maybe sharp money, but I'll lean towards the over in this, Pete, just because I always keep that same montage in the NFL. I just think the NFL is built for overs, a turnover here, a turnover there. A lot has to go your way to hit the over-unders. Pete, last night in the game with the New York Giants and the Denver Broncos, I actually still had on the closing line by the time we did the show, 37.5 and went under. I was lucky to hit that, but the under did come in that. When you bet over-unders in the NFL, Pete, as a generality, do you have a number that you like to look at, or is it more of like a style of pace that you look at in order to bet the over-unders?
It's a style of pace for sure, but definitely, as you just said, there's a lot of different ways that quirky points can be put up very quickly, in the NFL, as you know, with special teams and defensive scores. So, if I'm going to bet an under a low total, I have to have a very specific and clear reason for thinking that way. I'm expecting, obviously a lot of running and a slow-paced game, and not a high likelihood of defensive scores. And also, I look at special teams. Of course, any team with a home run hitter, in their return game is going to make me think twice about betting an under on a low total like that. But you're absolutely right. All those things are factored in, and there's definitely a lot of variance when it comes to NFL scores in general, particularly NFL totals. So I factor all that in, and if variance makes me lose a bet that in retrospect I still think was the right side, I'm totally fine with it. And that's how I feel about this one, taking the under at 48, notwithstanding all the things you said, which I absolutely agree with.
There we go. Look at that, Pete. Leaning on the under, got a good number. I'm going to lean on the over in this one at 46.5, so we'll see which one works out there. Not really feeling, though, the side in this one, Pete. Just more of a better play for the total for you there here.
I mean, I didn't bet it, and I'm not going to, but if I had to make a bet on it, I would take the Colts at +7. Tennessee has just not been good at all as a home favorite against bad teams, against the spread, and the game looks like it has a lot of that written all over it. And there's a lot of positives for Indianapolis. Like I said, the safety, T.Y. Hilton, obviously. Brissett can be good when he's given protection. The Indianapolis offensive line has not been good so far, but if they improve, that gives a big boost to the Colts, I think. And again, low-scoring game. I'm expecting relatively low volatility, so that makes me like a dog a little bit more as well. So all those factors combined would make me definitely lean Colts +7, although I'm not going to bet that.
I hear you there. All right, yeah, we're going to go in a little bit later in the show. Me and Pete are going to pick out a couple NFL games to preview some opening lines, give some opening thoughts on some of those games, but we'll hide that there for just a moment. Pete, Major League Baseball tonight, 8:05 p.m. Eastern start, so going to be interesting to see which game. I'd actually technically tonight rather watch the baseball game than the football game. I'm not that interested in Indianapolis and Tennessee, but we'll have both of those channels on here over in the right side household. 909, 910, Pete. Houston and the New York Yankees. Morton's on the mound versus Sabathia in this one. If we take a look at the opening line, Pinnacle, Pete, opened up at -125, now sitting at -131. Chris at 131. Bet online at -132. Sportsbook.com showing up at -135. Over under. Looks like across the board, 8.5. But in some of those spots, Pete, you're going to have to pay double juice in that instance. I don't want to say, I mean, you can't go down 0-3. I mean, it's very slim chances that you're going to come back. So more or less a do or die game for the New York Yankees tonight coming home to the Bronx. CC is going to be on the mound. The one thing I see in this game is if I'm looking to bet it from an angle, if you just want to isolate both of these pitchers, I think both of these teams can hit each one of these starting pitchers. But we see in the playoffs, Pete, a lot of times the quick hook is going to be out there. So if CC gives up maybe 2 runs, by the 3rd inning, they're already going to come get him out of the game and go to that deep and rich bullpen that they have. But I do like the way that lines up. In this game, Pete, I'm not going to look at a whole side a side for the game. I'm not even going to look for a total for the game. I'm going to isolate the first 5 innings and go over in the first 5 innings in this one, Pete. Which way are you looking in this one? What kind of leans can you give out on this one if you played any games already?
I'm looking at this game in 0 ways. I've made 0 bets on it, and between now and first pitch, I'm definitely not going to have a bet on this one, Donnie, right side. We talk all the time about how we, don't particularly like to bet Major League Baseball playoffs, and this is a classic example. If you gave me a free bet, I think the Yankees probably pull it out, and at -130, at -130, that's probably where I would put my free bet on, but I'm not going to bet my actual money on that one. Game could easily go either way, could easily see an under or an over, and just nothing that I'm seeing that makes me like a bet any which way on this one. But I certainly hope you cash. I have there's nothing that even remotely entices me to put my money down on this game.
Yeah, I'll lean. It's 4.5, Pete, in the first 5 innings. I'll lean on that. I like the, obviously, rosters that are going to come out. You're going to look at CC Sabathia coming from the left-handed side. Springer, Bregman, Altuve, Correa, Gurriel, Gaddis, Gonzalez, Reddick, and Dabin in that short porch ballpark there up in the Bronx. I think it's going to be a pretty decent game. I don't want to say it's going to be, 8.5 is kind of tough even in the playoffs at any time. Smaller ballpark there. You don't have those power arms out there, the Tanaka, the strikeout pitchers. I think the Yankees can put up a couple runs early on Morton before they can get to the bullpen. I can easily see a 3-2 game by the end of 5 innings, Pete. I'll lean on that one tonight there. Not the best weather in the Bronx tonight. We're finally getting a little bit of cool fall action up here, so maybe in that high 50s, low 60s, as opposed to what we've been seeing for the past couple weeks in the 70s. But an interesting game overall. Yankees, obviously, Pete, have to win this game. I'll just lean on the over 4.5 in the first 5 innings. And we'll see what takes place in that one. Pete, one hockey game here on deck tonight. One of my favorite rotations are in hockey, Pete. Rotation 1 and 2. Tampa Bay and Detroit tonight here. Opened up Pinnacle -120. Pinnacle -125. Now setting Chris -126. Bet online also -121. Over under here, Pete, at a 5.5. Just one game isolated on the NHL Ice, Pete. Can you give the listeners something that can make some money on here?
Well, yeah, I mean, I did bet this one. I bet the over 5.5. I got plus money on the overnight line. Then I gave it as an official pick in the morning show at 5.5 -101 at Pinnacle. Now it's up to -109 at Pinnacle and Bet Online and a few other places. 5 times has -108. And, both these teams have balanced scoring. They've done impressively well this year so far. Goaltenders are good, too. Jimmy Howard is playing great. Not sure how long that's likely to last, but he's definitely been very impressive. And in his career, he's done pretty well in October. But the scoring power, I think, for both teams gives some slight value to the over. So, if it had been, 120 or higher, I probably wouldn't have bet it or taken it or given it as a public pick. But when I got it at plus money, I thought it was worth a shot, and I thought it was still worth a shot at -101 on the overnight line. And at -109, I'd probably still take a shot with it, despite the fact that both goaltenders playing really well right now, and I definitely have tremendous respect for both of them. Just the Lightning are a better offensive team than what the Red Wings have seen so far this year, and the Lightning, I think, probably will be able to put up at least a few points. Red Wings, again, playing with, they have some forwards who are doing better than people expected, and they're playing with some speed and some enthusiasm. So I'm taking a shot with the over, and I did bet it. Just a modest shot, nothing crazy, standard unit bet.
There we go, Pete. Let's keep it moving here. And we're going to go over to the gridiron here, NCAA football action. Obviously going to kick up a nice big week. Picked out 5 games here today, Pete. Obviously, I always preface it by saying it is Monday in the live chat box out there. So we're not going to go over every game. Just like to pick out 5 interesting games with some opening lines to give some opening thoughts and maybe which way that Pete and I are leaning at this point. Pete may have already fired away and got the best numbers here. I have not done so yet. So we'll check out a few of these. 355, 356. One of the games I'm really looking forward to this weekend, Pete, it's a put up or shut up game for both of these ball clubs. Michigan and Penn State. Looks like an opening line at Pinnacle 9.5. Chris actually opened up a little bit more aggressive at minus 12.5. Looks like it's settled down right here, Pete, for on a Monday at minus 10 with an over-under 42.5. Penn State offensively appears to be the better club over Michigan, but, 2 decent defenses going to go head-to-head. The one thing that would surprise maybe the casual gambler here is saying, wait a second, Michigan's getting double digits from Penn State. Who has Penn State beaten? They barely escaped out of Iowa. Tough place to play, Pete, on a Saturday night at Penn State. They're probably going to have one of those whiteout games. It's going to be 100,000 deep there. I'm not so sure, looking at the early numbers here, is what Michigan's going to be able to do on offense, because we know Saquon Barkley can take it the distance, decent at the quarterback position for Penn State, with McSorley, also a very good tight end in Gesicki, and a good defense as well. But just looking overall, Pete, first thoughts I had on the game is 10 seems like a lot of points.
It does seem like a lot of points, and the more I looked into it, the more I thought not quite as many as they should be getting. I'm definitely leaning Penn State here, despite the fact that Michigan is obviously who they are, and getting big points here. Obviously, Michigan's coming off of 2 tough games, right? First the Michigan State game, and then a road win in overtime. And Penn State, of course, coming off of the bye. And I think the Penn State's game against Iowa looked a little bit better than the final. I mean, they were a little bit better than what the final score made them look like. And Michigan is wait, let me find my notes here. It's hold on one second. I'm sorry, my computer is catching up here. Sorry about that. Michigan's a legit great team, but I think it's a tough spot for them, and 10 is kind of a lot of points. We'll see where the line moves, but I'm definitely leaning Penn State. Before I pull the trigger on it, I have to look into it a little bit more. I don't think it's going to get bet up that much, although it could. Might drop down to a 9 or 9.5, and that would be great, but I'm definitely leaning Penn State here to start.
Yeah, it's interesting when they come out. It's one thing I love to look in the NFL, Pete, is extra rest time for football teams. The one stat that has been really holding up, which actually came to a crashing halt over the weekend, was that Thursday night football game where you got the rest and then you played a week and a half later. Tampa Bay got beat up pretty good by Arizona, and then also in the Meadowlands, the New York Jets covered against the New England Patriots. So for the first time in the season, that line went 0-2. In college football, Pete, when you take a look at coming off the bye week, there's a lot more, in the NFL, it's very fluid, 53-man roster, whatever, going to be activated. Those guys take a beating each and every week. College football, we have many more players, your scholarship, 80 to 90 players per team, a little bit deeper that. Do you put any stock in, or should I say put a lot more stock in, like you would in the NFL getting the bye week than you do in college? Because it is a pretty big indication tonight. Michigan's coming off an overtime game the week before, playing in the rain, tough fought battle, as you said, with Michigan State. Now coming in maybe a little bit banged up, shorter week, just because they played and Penn State did not play. Do you factor that in when you're betting a game in college
Absolutely.
football?
I mean, it's a huge factor, but it doesn't play the same role in every situation. There have been definitely times this year when I have given picks. I can't remember offhand which ones they were, but given picks, on a team that hasn't had a bye, going up against a team that's coming off of a bye. So it's situation specific, and it plays a different role for different kinds of teams. Some teams that have a lot more depth, it might matter less than teams that don't have a lot of depth. The skill quality matters, and the spot in the schedule matters as well. So it's a huge factor. It matters in different ways, in different circumstances. And in this particular spot, I think it is a pretty significant edge for Penn State. In other spots, it might not be, but in this spot, I think it is. And again, I'm leaning Penn State minus 10.
No, I can't disagree with you on that, Pete, as well. Like, if you take a look at the Northwestern game that Penn State did play on the road, 31-7 final there. Offensive statistics, not great, just under 100 yards rushing, 286 through the air. But when you look at the defensive statistics in that one, 67 yards, 198 67 yards on the ground, 198 in the air. Northwestern, that type of offense that's not explosive, doesn't have the real mobile quarterback. You can almost correlate a little bit between which type of matchups you're going to get. I always like to look at that. And you're right, in that Iowa game, a 21-19 final, if most people just looked at that on its head and said, I was okay, but Penn State probably should have lost that game. Penn State in that game, Pete, 295 on the ground, 284 in the air. Defensively in that game, 82 yards they give up against a really good rushing team in Iowa, and 191 in the air. Going through the season, Pete, even dating back to the Pittsburgh game, look at through the air, 187 in the Pittsburgh game, 170 Georgia State, 191 Iowa, 175 Indiana, and 198 Northwestern. They haven't given up over 200 yards in the air against like competition. And again, Pete, Michigan's coming in the game. It's not like a high-flying offense here.
Right. I mean, that Iowa game is the type of game where if the situations were right, I would give a team like Penn State a big knock for it. But considering how that game went and the kind of team that Iowa is, I don't take a big negative for Penn State out of that game, and I think it was fine. And yeah, I agree with you. Iowa's a quality team. I think Penn State played them well. Final score was a little bit deceptively close, and I don't knock Penn State too much for that result. Although that is the kind of game that I would knock other teams for depending on the circumstances.
Yeah, number 2 now in the country, so they're going to be juiced up in Happy Valley for that Michigan team coming in. And again, Michigan hasn't played all that well, but still a 5-1 club where they lost a close one in the rain. Could have went either way in the Big House, so we'll see what happens there. I know a lot's going to change as the week goes on. Game number 2, we're going to look at, Pete, of this 5-pack, 389-390, Tennessee-Alabama. Looks like a beat-down alert type game, which again, Alabama gives teams a lot of beat-down, but it looks like maybe a little bit of extra juice here. You can help push Butch Jones a little bit more out the door. Last week, if you watched Tennessee, a gamesmanship effort came right down to the goal line. They score a touchdown. They win the football game. If they don't, they lose. Well, they ended up losing that game 15-9 the week before that. Decimated 2 weeks before. The Georgia Bulldogs hammered them 41-0 at Tennessee as well. Tennessee's now going to go on the road, and no easy shakes here. I mean, you're going to go up against an angry, hungry Alabama team that seems like it enjoys running through the SEC and punishing teams. Arkansas was last up there, 41-9. I know Arkansas scored a little bit later in that game, but that was a blowout right from jump. Texas A&M played them well, 27-9, but Ole Miss 66-3. Vanderbilt 59-0. Does Butch Jones have a last stand here? Because it's interesting when you cap these games, Pete. It's not like, hey, Alabama's going to win easy, minus 13.5 or minus 17.5. I mean, we're looking at 34.5 in this game. So basically, you got to score 5. You got to beat the team by 5 touchdowns. The one thing that gives you a little bit of pause, Pete, for me, is that when you look overall at Tennessee, in order to give a puncher's chance versus Alabama, you have to do something on offense. You looked at the game, obviously 9 points last week. At least A&M scored 19 points. But going back to Tennessee's offense here, 9 points, 0 points, 17 points versus UMass. You're going to have to do a lot more than that to win this football game or even stay even competitive here, Pete.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We were just talking about the bye, and last week was a perfect example of a team coming off the bye that when I looked into that game deeper, thought it wouldn't help them at all. And it's interesting because last week I called that South Carolina-Tennessee game dead on. In the beginning of the week, my first analysis was I'm leaning Tennessee. If there's ever a game that they're going to be able to win and cover, it's this one. And then later on, during the middle of the week, I did my deeper research, and I went on one of my shows and I said, all right, I did my deeper research. This team just sucks bad. I'm not going to be betting them, even off a bye, even only giving 2.5 or 3. And I did wind up making a pick on that game, and it was the under, which I cashed up pretty easily. So yeah, Tennessee is a bad team. They're in a world of hurt right now. As far as the spread's concerned, I'm not exactly sure, but my note on this game was that I would be leaning under on anything, even if it was in the upper 40s, and it wound up opening around 50, I think, or 51. So I would be leaning under here. We've seen Alabama do this a lot, where they just get a dominant win early and then sort of coast the rest of the way. If I was going to bet Alabama here, I would definitely try to take them on the first half and not the full game at minus 34. Try to take them on the first half at minus 21, even if you have to take, like, I don't know, 22.5 or something like that. Anything under 24, I would be looking to take Alabama on the first half more than on the full game. I mean, they might blow them out anyway. It might be one of these 66-3 type games. But my leans as of right now would be to the under and Alabama on the first half.
Yeah, looking at the over-under there, Chris opened up at 49. It's now, Chris has it about 50.5, 50, depending on where you're shopping at there. But it is interesting. If you look last week, Peak, I believe the over-under in the Arkansas game was 54 points, and that was before they announced that Allen was going to be out of the game at quarterback. They're going to start the young kid there. And it actually got close with the final score 41-9. So they were technically a little bit closer than what you thought they would be. But Arkansas struggled to move the football that whole game. And it was almost like, again, right from Jump Street, I believe within the first 2 plays that Alabama already had a touchdown and was off to the races. I think they're going to take a lot of pride here, Alabama, in really taking it to Tennessee. I saw the practice reports coming out of Alabama today that on repeat over the loudspeakers, they're playing Rocky Top left and right there. And if you noticed in the offseason, Pete, which was kind of interesting, Nick Saban said, hey, we take the Tennessee game, more serious than, the Auburn game or whatever he was joking about there. So it's always nice. And you see, Butch Jones out there who maybe just needs that little bit more of a push in order for the Tennessee Regents to knock him out. One of those games, Pete, that might end up 45-0 could do it here. And I think Alabama's going to take it with good reason and try to run it up on him here, Pete.
Right. Well, but I mean, if you look at the Arkansas game, Alabama actually didn't cover. Arkansas got the cover in that one, but it was 24-zip after the first half. So Alabama covered the first half spread, I believe. I'm not sure what the first half spread was, but I'm assuming it was less than 24.
Yeah, it had to have, because what the line closed, maybe 37. The line started earlier in the week. Yep, exactly. Closed to 37 once the quarterback changed. Yeah, so you would have had that covered in the first half. Yeah.
So the books are on to how Alabama tends to play, but again, how motivated will they be to run up the score in the second half? Not exactly sure, but the best, safest bet might just be Alabama on the first half.
You got it. Next up here, Pete, 391, 392, a noon kickoff here on Saturday afternoon Eastern time. And that'll be Oklahoma State and Texas. Looks like early indications here, spread dollars coming in. It's very early, 59% leading on Oklahoma State. Line opened up at Pinnacle -7. Chris opened up at -6. Bet Online now showing almost triple juice at -7. Chris showing half juice at -7.5, which is kind of interesting because I know a lot of people like to lean on the Oklahoma State Cowboys at this point. Texas, though, has been game in a lot of games that they've been going up against. A little bit undermanned right now. Tom Herman trying to put that, offense in gear. Last week they did get the cover, losing 29-24 versus Oklahoma. The week before at Kansas State picked up the victory, 40-34, covering that line also. Iowa State 17-7 got the cover there. USC got the cover. So, not want to say covering machine in that aspect, but obviously the last 5 games they played, they covered all 5 games. Texas, Oklahoma State coming into this game after smashing Baylor 59-6 in that one. In this game, if I'm looking early, Pete, looking at the line, it looks a little deceptive because I like Oklahoma State as a football team. I think they have a very good offense. They're going to be able to score. Having said that, the over-under at 65, Pete, if I'm looking at this football game, I'm actually leaning over right here. I think Texas is going to be able to put up points. And also, just because the benefit, Oklahoma State doesn't have a very good defense, and Oklahoma State can score, and Oklahoma State likes to go fast. So a lot of opportunities. I can see both of these teams approaching the 30s. Obviously, the winner probably going to be in the mid-30s to high 30s. I think this game might go over the total 65, Pete. Any early indicators for you here?
Yeah, I haven't looked at the total yet. I did have Texas last week, and I completely passed on the Oklahoma State game. When this line came out, I did grab Oklahoma State at 7, even though I have a strong suspicion that at some point 6.5s will be widely available, maybe even 6s or 5.5s or whatever. Texas, as you said, a game team, a strong team, a lot to recommend them. But I think that the Oklahoma game probably took a lot out of them. Very impressed with what Oklahoma State is capable of doing, and I'm not sure that Texas is going to be able to stop 2 big passing offenses in a row. And I like Oklahoma State here minus the points, and I bet it.
Yeah, Pete, what's interesting about that? Another good point here with college football that we can bring up. You're coming off that rivalry game. You spend a lot. You just miss, everything that you were trying to hope for. It's a big rivalry playing down in Dallas during the State Fair. The same thing would apply last week, which I took a little bit from. Miami finally gets over the hump against Florida State. Earlier in the week, Georgia Tech shows up at a 7. I took it there. And, as the week went on, it was down to as low as 5.5, but closed right around that 6.5 on game day. I just thought Miami might have been a little bit under the gun in that one, still feeling themselves a little bit, celebrating, getting that big weight off their chest. They come out and they almost lose the football game, but, nice fourth quarter comeback in the pouring rain, able to drive down and get the field goal. When looking at this game, Pete, and you're right, Texas, Oklahoma, that is the rivalry. We lost. We have to take a deep breath. But right behind it, Oklahoma State's coming to town. Some would say, just as equal, maybe even better than Oklahoma at this point. Do you take a little bit of an edge off of Texas because of that rivalry game lost the week before here?
In this spot, I do. But again, this is just like a bye week where it's definitely, situation specific. It depends on what kinds of teams they're playing. I tend to take a little bit more off of them if they're going up against a team with a big offense like Oklahoma State has, as opposed to a team with a big defense. And yeah, I completely agree with you. I was on Georgia Tech last week. I mentioned it, from day one last week that was a way that I was leaning. It's not always the case that coming off a big game, a team has a letdown the next week. And a perfect example of that was Texas A&M last week. Of course, or 2 weeks ago, they played a tight game against Alabama, played them very well. It was a game where we got a quote-unquote moral victory. And some were saying that the Texas game against Oklahoma was a moral victory for Texas. I think that the moral victory for Texas A&M against Alabama was a bigger deal for them than this one was for Texas going up against Oklahoma. And in my preview of the Texas A&M game, I mentioned that I like Texas A&M against Florida. Florida was also a vulnerable team. Here, this is a completely different situation. I don't see Oklahoma State as a vulnerable team. I see them as a team that I'm looking to bet on, and especially a team because of their big offense, I'm looking to bet on them even more so against a team like Texas coming off of rivalry games. So the answer is yes. Again, rivalry games are a huge deal, but they don't mean the same thing in every situation. And in this spot, I do think it's a negative for Texas, and that's part of the reason I like Oklahoma State here.
All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. It's the closing line, 1016 at 2017, presented by SportsbookReview.com. Right now, about mid-show here. It's Monday. Every Monday and Thursday, we like to bring in CG Technologies' Matt Holt. And Matt, welcome into the show, buddy. Welcome back on.
Donnie, how we doing? What a crazy few days in college football, but what a weekend for the book. Capped off by an unbelievable night last night. We had a $770,000 bet on Denver, minus the 13 last night. Obviously, they never got close to getting there. Big finish to a big weekend for the book.
No, I was going to say there, Matt, coming in, the joke, from your side would have been, free bagels for everybody in the office, breakfast. Everybody was good. Took that extra time getting the office, playing the music nice and loud on the way in. I imagine it was. If we looked at yesterday, some of the perfect angles from your side of the counter here. You have the big guys going down like Denver. Nobody would have thought they'd go down. Even from parlay teaser numbers, you also had the Atlanta Falcons there, another huge team losing outright there at the gun. You also had Green Bay. Nobody wishes injuries, but I know looking at that game, probably from yourself, Matt, wasn't really a bad thing that Aaron Rodgers went down from your side, was it?
No, absolutely not. That ended up being a big position for us, having Aaron Rodgers end up going down yesterday. And you're right, it kicked off the day with a bang. The Miami Dolphins down 17-0 at halftime. Not only rally to get the number for us, but rally to kill all those money line parlays, all those teasers, and get the cash straight up there. Go into the afternoon. Everybody all over Tampa Bay. Arizona can't do anything. Carson Palmer's done. Adrian Peterson's washed up. Adrian Peterson has a monster. Arizona jumps out to a 21-0 lead, holds on to win that one 38-33. That was a huge game for us. And then, of course, the finale of the nightcap of a monster day with the Denver Broncos losing outright. And, this is the first time since 2017 years that Bruce Road have won more games than home teams, and underdogs have won more games than favorite road teams. 46 and 44 through 6 weeks in the NFL. That's an unbelievable stat.
No, it really is when you get back to the point there. Looking at some of the games that were interesting, even heading in on Sunday, if I don't even want to say from like a public aspect, but just looking at some of the stuff and looking from some of the numbers where they were cruising through. Matt, from your side all year long, me and Jeff talk about on the right side of campus every day. It's almost like we have a daily diatribe that says, why are you still betting on Cleveland, and why do the sharps, so-called sharps, like the Cleveland Browns so much? Looking at the game on Sunday throughout the week, I had it peaking at 10, 9.5, and all of a sudden 9, 8.5, 8, 7, 7.5. Some even sevens were showing up for a moment on the board with double juice for the Cleveland, or plus 7.5, plus 7 for the Cleveland Browns. What do you see each and every Sunday? Are you still taking a lot of sharp betting angles on Cleveland? Because it seems like the more they lose, the more people think there's opportunity to bet the Browns, but it never comes to fruition.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but you're right. It's Browns every single week by the sharp players. I have 2 entries in the Hilton Super Contest. One of them I have a couple of partners in with me, and we're having a great year. 19-11 so far. 64% right there in the mix for the $1,000,000. And yet, once again, 4-1 this week. Our one lost the Cleveland Browns because I couldn't get my partners off it. A lot of sharp guys this week were completely sold on the fact that, okay, Deshaun Kaiser was the worst quarterback according to quarterback ratings in the entire NFL. So there's only one place to go for the Browns now, starting Kevin Hogan, and that's up. And Hogan comes out and looks no worse than Kaiser, throwing 2 early picks. Browns never in the game, down 24-0 before you can blink. And you're right, I don't understand it, because normally when you see a team go on a big run where sharps get buried with, whether it's a team that's a favorite or a team that's an underdog like the Browns, you tend to see them stopping them. Not this year. Just like last year, every week, sharp action on the Browns. Same thing this year, week after week after week, sharp money being thrown away on the Cleveland Browns.
No, you're right there. If we look at Sunday, before we go over a little bit of topics for Saturday itself and then get to some stuff tonight, looking from your side, obviously I know it was a decent day. What were some of the winners and losers from your side? Like where did the public get over on you, and maybe a couple spots where, you didn't see, but it was really nice where you pulled out some nice victories on Sunday from your end of the table?
Well, look, obviously that Minnesota-Green Bay was a huge swing game. There were a lot of question marks about that game going into the day. With no Stephon Diggs and the issues and injuries at quarterback and running back for the Minnesota Vikings. So we were pretty lopsided on that game. That really kicked us off strong. Miami coming back in that game was a big win for us. But I'll tell you where the public did get us, the San Francisco 49ers. And they have become a public dog. Coming into this week, they had lost 4 games by a total of 11 points. The public was all over the Niners. We actually had sharp money on the Washington Redskins here. Washington off a bye, San Francisco off 2 straight road overtime losses, playing their 3rd straight overtime game. Their 3rd straight road game. West Coast to East playing early. A lot of situational disadvantages for San Francisco that the Sharps really like the favorite there. One of the few favorites the Sharps really did like heavy. And the Niners got home as a public dog for the bettors. The New Orleans Saints were the biggest winner of the day for the betting public. That line opened 4, skyrocketed up to 5.5 at one point. We took a 6-figure bet on the Saints. Actually, I think we ended up taking 3 6-figure bets on the Saints and a lot of public action. Parlays, teasers. Saints by far biggest winner for the public yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, what's interesting about that game? I was on the Saints with the -4. One of those games, and I always like to stress to people, because we're all superstitious as gamblers here. We don't want to congratulate ourselves. You don't want to be like, hey, that was a nice and easy winner. Sitting there watching that game, it's 45-10 after the interception of Matt Stafford, I believe, maybe about 8 minutes to go in the 3rd quarter. So usually you could take a deep breath saying, all right, you know what? Maybe Detroit had saw that, Aaron Rodgers is out. We don't want to get hurt. Matthew Stafford's been banged up. Maybe we just run the clock out. And all hell breaks loose in that football game. And it's a 7-point game in the 4th quarter. And I'm saying to myself, and again, Detroit has the ball down 7. Thank goodness for that tipped interception in the end zone, which basically ended the comeback. But it's never over till it's over in the NFL. A lot similar to me, Matt, like the NBA. Like, you see a team with a 25-point lead in the 2nd quarter. Next thing you know, they end up losing the game by 10 points. Just as the overall gambler in me, you still have to sweat games, Matt, where you're up 35 points in the 3rd quarter in a home game, only covering 4. So brings up all that good stuff. Let's take a look, Matt, at some Saturday action here and some winners and losers. But actually, before we get to that, I want to talk about the Friday night slate with Syracuse and Clemson, and also California and Washington State, 2 major upsets. Did you take, significant numbers on that Friday slate? Because if you're looking at that, not very many predicted outright winners by Syracuse and Cal in those games.
Yeah, and Friday ended up being another big night for us at the books. Like, I was on Cal. I think Cal situationally made a lot of sense. From a standpoint of, look, Washington State played their first 5 games at home. The one road game they had played all year was against the beat-up Oregon team. So the power rating was massively inflated compared to the actual product on the field for me in terms of Washington State. And Cal had actually exceeded expectations. And this was basically their big game of the season. Friday night, national TV against the top 10 team. You expected to get a big effort. Certainly didn't expect to get an outright win there. Certainly not 33-3. But that ended up being a huge game for us. We had a $200,000 money line bet on there. And with the both of them losing, we end up turning Friday, which is a day we thought we'd do little handle, into almost $1 million winner.
Yeah, I mean, two huge upsets in that one, which basically set up the way the rest of the weekend was going, because we saw a couple more upsets there on Saturday. A couple of those games, Matt, on Saturday, some winners and losers from your side, because I know a lot of these upsets in there play right into your hand there. What did you see on Saturday, Matt?
Well, starting with what went right for the book, LSU Tigers getting that home money straight up and against the spread against Auburn. That was a big win. UNLV, the hometown love, actually going on the road, covering the spread after being up 27-0 in that game, letting Air Force come all the way back and getting the win, but UNLV still getting the cover. We had big UNLV money line liability, 6 figures that way, 6-figure liability to Air Force on the spread. So that was actually a really good game for us with the Rebels covering the spread, but not winning that game outright. UConn actually getting the number against Temple, another big game for us right there. Mm-hmm. And then some big losers for the book. Coastal Carolina game was a big one. Indiana, actually a big game for us at 7.5. Once that game got down to 7, we stopped seeing that money. A lot of Indiana at 7.5. We took 2 6-figure bets in Boston College over Louisville. Very unexpected. Ended up losing 6 figures in that game as well. And then the other biggest loser, I was just looking at it, Georgia Tech getting the money against Miami. A lot of love for the Yellow Jackets in this one, who didn't get the outright win. Again, this is a situation for us. We actually would have liked Georgia Tech to win this game outright. They did. Yeah. And they don't cover the spread, and they failed to win the game. That was a big one for the bettors.
Gotcha. 2 good things I want to take a look at tonight, Matt, before we get you out of here. Obviously, Monday Night Football, always big on deck here. 275, 276, Indianapolis versus the Tennessee Titans here. Line sitting anywhere between 6.5 to 7 on this one. And to me, breaking the game and knocking it down, if this was, sandwiched in somewhere on Sunday, I probably wouldn't be looking at the game. But obviously, since it's Monday, what are we looking at, Matt, from this perspective? Who's getting the money? Because from my levels here, it looks like pretty much an even ticket split, but the dollars might be a little bit different in that aspect. What are you seeing from your side of the table there, Matt?
It's interesting. It's the public on the road dog tonight. 4 times more dollars wagered over the counter, more public action over the counter on the Indianapolis Colts. But when we look at the sharper action, the on-account action that we've taken thus far, almost dead even. And most of that sharp action came in at 7.5. Since that game has actually gone to 7, the action's about dead even, or maybe even slightly screwed toward the Tennessee Titans on account. So actually really great two-way action tonight. Very low liability on the road dog here, Indianapolis Colts. The one place that's not great two-way action is on the total here, where we have seen unbelievable one-sided sharp action on the under here, under 47, under 46. We're probably going to, under 46.5 and under 46. We may be down to 45.5 by kickoff.
Now, I want to preface this by saying, Matt, on that, were you getting a lot of action around 10:30 Eastern time to 11 Eastern time? Because our very own Pistol Pete Loshak gave the under there, and I think that was one of that surge, that tidal wave coming your direction on the under there.
Hey, look, it might have been. It certainly started this morning. I will say that. It started late this morning, that tidal wave of under action, and has continued this afternoon. We've yet to take a bet over $1,000 on the over yet tonight.
No, interesting stuff. One more game, Matt, before we get you going here. 909, 910. Obviously, Major League Baseball still in play here in the ALCS and NLCS. Tonight, we're going to have Houston and New York Yankees on deck. Over-under looks like it's about 8.5, lines anywhere between 130 to 131. So pretty much an even play here for us tonight. What are we looking at from your side? Because I know from just a gambling perspective, the Yankees have to, quote unquote, I should say, have to win this baseball game. You're playing, 2 good hitting offenses, not super marquee pitchers, power pitchers on the mound at this point. Are we seeing any total play action or any side action here, Matt, that we should take a look at?
So interestingly enough, both over the counter and on account by the sharper players, about 3 to 1 dollars wagered on the over rather than the under. But I'll tell you, on the side and the money line here, well, the spread and the money line here, we were taking pretty equal action, both over account, on account, over the counter. But just recently, we took $135,000 bet to win 100,000. That really shifted our risk. Before that, we were almost black. Now we're stuck about 100 to the New York Yankees. So we're certainly going to be Astros fans tonight. And unless we get a bunch of Astros money in late, it looks like that 1 6-figure bet we took probably going to swing us to needing the Astros.
How about that there? And by the way, I do want to give a shout out there for you, Matt. Devin came in, filled in. He almost tried to Wally Pip you there by taking up the camera information, giving good insights as well as you guys do over there at CJ Technology. So I did want to, so if you see him around the office, tell him great job. He's more than welcome to come back at any time there for you and certainly pinch hit. But Matt, once again, if you guys are just tuning into the show, CG Technologies, Matt Holt, give him a follow on Twitter at Matthew Holt VP. Very good follow there. Obviously, always updating, the kids' information. And by the way, before you get you out of here, I always like to talk about it. Are we in the playoff stretch here for the 702 Niners out there?
Yeah, coming off our first loss of the season, we played the number one team in the state, the Ducks. Number one seed in the playoffs, all on the line, and we absolutely got waxed 28-0. It was 21-0 in a blink. They returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown and then completed an onside kick right after it. It was 15-0 before our offense ever got on the field. The kids looked a little shell-shocked. We lost 28-0. Assuming that we win next week, and we should, we're a 14-point favorite, I'd say, about next week. We should be the number 2 seed in the playoffs, but yeah, Matty was a little bummed out Saturday night.
Matt, as I say in the industry, buy low, sell high. So a great betting opportunity there if we're looking to bet the 702 Niners. But nevertheless, always love having you on the show. Another Monday here with CG Technologies, Matt Holt. Matt, once again, buddy, thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks, Donnie. Have a great night. Best of luck, everybody, tonight. Take care.
There we go. CG Technologies, Matt Holt. And by the way, Pete, did you hear the information coming out there? It's just unknown quantities of money flowing in on the under once the odds couple show was on the air. Do you believe that?
Yes, I do believe that. Of course, I believe it.
Let's take a look here, Pete. We got a couple minutes left here on the show. Do have a little bit of NFL work I would like to say that we'd like to go over. Picked out 3 games that we're just going to preview really quickly here. Some opening lines that we have, 465, 466 this weekend. Maybe the most interesting game, New Orleans and Green Bay. Obviously, we know Green Bay now without their quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. Hundley's going to be the man from what looks like the rest of the year here. Line opens up at Pinnacle at 3.5. Chris opened up at 5.5. Now up to 6.5, Pete. A 6.5 road favorite New Orleans going into Green Bay. That just leads to show you, how much is Aaron Rodgers actually worth? If they're up to 6.5 on that end, you could easily see if Aaron Rodgers is playing in this football game, maybe even 6.5 as a favorite towards the Packers. An unbelievable swing, over under 47.5, 48, depending on where you're shopping. The one thing that gives Green Bay a little bit of a boost, as you would say, is Hundley got in some game action this weekend. Obviously not getting much snaps in practice. He's going to take the full amount of snaps going forward here. Just an early look at that, Pete. Just stunning to see the line where New Orleans is going to go into Lambeau and almost lay a touchdown against the Packers here, Pete.
Yeah, we've talked about this in videos over the years, how much are players worth in the NFL. And it's like, running backs are worth a half point, maybe a wide receiver worth 3/4 of a point. Sometimes a center can be worth 3/4 of a point. An all-star quarterback can be worth 8, 10, 12 points, and it's, I guess, a legitimate valuation. That's how much of a difference it does make when you have a guy like Brady or Aaron Rodgers or one of these guys. So as far as this game is concerned, I really have to set aside about an hour in my week this week to figure out what I think about it. The Saints obviously have covered 3 in a row, and the Saints have been a team that have been attracting notable sharp action since week 1 of the season. So the Saints are clearly a team that the Sharps consider to be undervalued in general, or at least up till now they have. I'm not sure. My initial gut reaction is that maybe a little bit of an overreaction to Rodgers being out. And, if you gave me a free play right now that I had to bet right now within 3 seconds, I would throw it on Green Bay at +6. But I have to do a lot more research into this game. Certainly an interesting handicapping situation to dig your teeth into, though.
Yeah, no, I agree here. 471, 472, Pete. Break up the New York Giants, the biggest win of all time in NFL history. The Giants go in and upset the Denver Broncos. We can all remember this and tell that game to our children as we're, getting older and older. We can pass that down from family to family. Wilson and Manning going to match up in this football game. Seattle's coming off a bye, rested, healthy, and ready. I know they were nicked up heading into the bye after getting a nice win over the Los Angeles Rams. Whether or not they deserved it, another story, but it was a victory here. Now going to come over to the East Coast, where we know they're a little bit different football team, obviously, than playing at home in that environment. Out in Seattle. Line opened up at 8 at Pinnacle with plus juice, but looks like Chris opened up a more line that's, usable at -7. Pinnacle showing -6. Chris actually showing -5 right now. So the Giants getting a little bit of love. Best wide receivers are out in this game. Most skilled positions are banged up, but they do show yeoman's effort last night. Maybe even they can get back Olivier Vernon on the front line to try to secure that defense. DRC should be back as well. But are we maybe reaching a little bit here saying, hey, the Giants might have galvanized for one football game, but we know pretty much what they are? Or maybe is seeing is believing here, where the Giants simplifying the playbook, taking the call duties away from McAdoo. Now he can just be a head coach and see what happens here. Eli had a decent game, getting the ball out quick, not turning it over. What are we looking at early from this one, Pete? Because just looking at the game, it's hard to say that you want to back the New York Giants, but can you find a way to back the New York Giants in this one, Pete?
Yeah, this is a tough one. You always pick the real tough ones, Donnie, right side on Monday. My first thought is, well, first of all, the Denver and Giants game last week, I'm proud to say that I stayed way off it. Didn't have a bet on the side or the total. Not that I thought that the Giants were going to win or cover, but that the game felt very fishy to me, very scary, and I just stayed way off it. This one, I am leaning towards Seattle. I think the Giants are a fundamentally flawed team, and it's nice that Seattle's off the bye. I'm not completely sold on Seattle's talent level justifying this degree of a road favorite line here. So I have to look into a little bit more. Definitely haven't bet it yet, but my initial thought, my initial gut lean is Seattle minus the points, even at anything, even at 6, anything under a touchdown.
One more game here, Pete, 475, 476. Next Sunday night's football game, Atlanta's going to travel to New England and take on Tom Brady and the Patriots. The line opened up total-wise, Pete, 54, 53.5. Now sitting at 55.5 at some spots, which is an exorbitant line. But taking a look at the way these defenses have played, you could sort of see it there. But something is just a little bit amiss with Tom Brady and the Patriots right now. Not getting that full, offensive explosion that you're used to, struggled, fought with the Jets, being down 14-0. Actually a nice win on circumstance, being down that much early and fighting on the road to get the victory. But something's a little bit off there. And let's not take anything away from the Atlanta Falcons at home versus the Miami Dolphins. An embarrassing loss, especially coming off of the bye week. Should have been rested and ready. You can't tell me that Mohamed Sanu being out was the difference in that football game. They had a big lead in the first half and ended up blowing that one. So heading to New England, still no easy feat to beat the Patriots in this one. But from what they're hanging out there, Pete, 55, 55.5, they're going to expect to be a lot of scoring. And New England only a 3-point favorite here at home versus a dome team. Early look on this, Pete. What kind of indications are we looking at here?
Well, I'm actually seeing 3.5. You're seeing 3? Is it a split line or?
I got -3. I actually, you're right about it. Bet online is -3, -120. So yes, double juice. Probably 3.5 is more the correct line here.
Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, there's something off with the Pats. I'll tell you what, there's also something weirdly off with Atlanta, because you mentioned that they collapsed in the second half against Miami. But that was not a one-game anomaly. They've won their first halves and lost their second halves, I think, in each of their games so far this year, except for their opening week game against Chicago. And, of course, in the Super Bowl, the exact same thing happened. So Atlanta is clearly a team that has it together in the first half, and then in the second half, something falls apart. Maybe in the locker room at halftime, they should just go in and, instead of talking or yelling, or just meditate. Maybe just sit there, go in and meditate in halftime, because they got to change something, because they completely collapsed against Miami. And the same thing happened in each of their prior games this year, except for week 1. So if you expect that pattern to continue and you like Atlanta here, maybe take a shot with Atlanta on the first half, or maybe even the first quarter. I don't know if they're going to be able to change those tendencies, but it's definitely a weird one, and it definitely was not limited just to the Miami game. And yeah, the Pats are also, their offensive line was better, but they still have issues in the defense. I'm not sold on their ability to stop big passing games. Sanu is a big question mark. If he's back, that's definitely a big boost that I would give to Atlanta here. So this is definitely a weird game. Wait and see is what I'm going to be doing here. And I have no opinion on it as of right now. Again, if you gave me a bet right now that I had to use within the next 3 seconds, I probably would throw it on Atlanta plus 3.5. But I could easily see Atlanta being up in the first half and then once again blowing it in the second half and losing by 5 or something like that. Two very weird teams this year, Donnie Rightside.
Yeah, rare. I mean, looking at New England, -3, -3.5 at home. That's not numbers that you're used to seeing in the past. Usually double digits, 7.5, 8. Will they cover it? We'll see what happens in this game because, again, just last week going against a decent or what we would think to be a decent Jets team on the road, laying, almost double digits in that one. So taking a look here, coming back, some good, interesting slates here. Good taking a future look at those, Pete, with you here for NCAA football and the NFL football. We're going to get out of here in just a few moments. We'll leave it up to some picks here tonight on the show. I'm going to lean on taking the Yankees and Houston Astros over 4.5 first 5 innings wager, and a small play here on the over 46.5 in the football game. Pete, what are we looking at here that you can recap here on some picks for the people tonight?
Well, I guess it's between the under in the Indianapolis-Tennessee game, which would have to be 46.5 now, not the 48 that I gave in the morning, and the over 5.5 in the Tampa Bay-Detroit game. And I guess out of those two, I would pick. I'll go head-to-head with you, Donnie Whiteside. I will still take the under 46.5. Although on my permanent record, I get 48. It was the game, the line that I gave when I gave it officially in the morning. So I get 48. But I'll go head-to-head with you. I'll take under 46.5 right now, Donnie.
There we go. Another episode here of the Closing Line presented by SportsbookReview.com. I want to thank Pistol Pete Loshak for coming on the show today. Give him a follow on Twitter if you haven't done so yet, at Pete Loshak. Also check him out all over the channel as well. Superstar of the Odds Couple, and also doing the Closing Line on the weekend with the big man on campus, 11 a.m. Don't miss that on Saturdays. Get you ready. Both of those guys having a fantastic college football season. Check out everything at SBRodds.com. Also follow us on the latest on Twitter at SBR Sports Picks. Also give us a subscription, a like, a follow. Let us know what you feel on YouTube as well. From all of us at SportsbookReview.com. Good luck on your wagers tonight, and we hope we helped you beat the Closing Line. Take care, fellas.